Hey, hello everyone. Welcome back to Hands On with Maxon. And I hope everyone is doing fine today. And yeah, as you can see, we are joined today by Diego Yama, our guest speaker. If you already know Diego from our previous sessions before, that's great. Diego is a colorist based in Colombia, but today he is live from Cartagena, right, Diego?
Yeah. I'm live Cartagena. That is a beautiful city here in
I
Colombia.
can see in the background. That looks amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm so happy to be here with you, with everyone.
Awesome. Yeah, and today we'll be talking about lighting and how lighting can affect your thought when you are color grading, affect your decisions when you are doing color grading, right? And in the hands-out session, in the hands-out sections in this GoToWebinar, you can find the download links, the one that you can use to get a free T-shirt. I'll go to that later on. And then there's also a handout for the PowerPoint. So if you want to download the PowerPoint and follow along, you can download it in the handout sessions, right? And apart from that, if you missed the last sessions, you can see them in our YouTube channel. It's called Maxon Training Team. All the webinars hosted by the training team will be uploaded into our YouTube channel, Maxon Training Team. And so do this webinar. As soon as after we finish, we wrap it up and we'll upload it there. And also, to get a free t-shirt, you need to access the link in the download link. Here you go. And use the password 08 titles. And using this, you will get a free t-shirt. You can order one of this t-shirt and without paying for the price. You just need to pay for the shipping cost, which is around about $4 each. And if you would like to test your knowledge about Maxon product, you can go to maxon.net/certifications. And there are three different certifications or tests that you can do. The one that I really recommend you to try out is the elementary knowledge test. And especially if you're using Magic Bullet Suite, if you want to refresh your memory, you can try Magic Bullet Suite and try to test your knowledge. Um, Upon passing, you will get a certificate of acknowledgement. And to check the upcoming events hosted by Maxon, you can also visit maxon.net/events. And yeah, to access the download materials for the previous sessions, you can also go to the Dropbox link that we provide here. And for this particular sessions, we haven't uploaded the clips, but we'll do it as soon as we wrap up the webinar because of the technical difficulties. And yeah, I hope you understand that. And yeah, without further ado, let us go to our sessions then. And in today's sessions, we will talk about lighting, why lighting is important. And then after that, we'll also go into Resolve and see how HDR tools can help you in your color grading. We'll also talk a little bit about Luma Keyer, and maybe Diego can show us how you can light your scenes using Luma Keyer. And then after that, we'll go to Power Window, and we'll wrap up our sessions with tracking. So if let me hide my GoToWebinar interface. So if you're already familiar with lighting, you probably already know that lighting is one key aspect to create or to establish mood in your scene, right? But lighting types are not the only sole contributor when it's coming to establishing mood. Set design, color scheme, wardrobes, or all of those plays important part when building a mood. But in today's discussions, we'll just limit our conversations to just the lighting. So normally when we are want to create an image, we stumbled upon generally two types of lighting, right? Really, the hard light or the soft light. And maybe with some creativity, a bit of both, a combinations of both, right? But what is a hard light really? And how do you know if it's a hard light or if it's a soft light? Hard light, if you want to understand hard light, if you're seeing a sharp edges of the shadow, and you can really assume that this is a hard light. And when you see the edges of the shadow is a little bit blurred out, and you can understand that this is a soft light. And why is hard light is important and why is soft light is important? Because they are all, both of them, um, deliver a different feeling to your shot. Hard light is used normally to enhance texture, for example. And as you can see in the left, you can really see the details of the skin. But when you are using soft light, normally you are using soft light to soften the texture. And hard light can be achieved by using a light source which is relatively small to the subject or further away from the subject. But soft light is quite the opposite. It's going to be a bigger light source or even closer light source. And as I said before, with some creativity, you can achieve both in one shot. For example, mixing hard light and soft light. And the result, you get a sharp shadow, but with a very smooth textures. And this can be probably achieved with something like a very hard key light and very soft fill light. Speaking about key and filling light, those are just the light that you use to achieve different purpose. Key light is used when you are establishing your exposure. Meanwhile, fill light is the light that you use to control the density of your shadow in the scene, right? So in lighting, especially when we have human subject in our project, in our shot, light patterns are also important factor when it's coming to establishing a mood. Why is that important? Because lighting patterns determine how many shadows goes into the image, and shadows equal drama. So if you want to get a dramatic shot, try to incorporate more shadows into your shots. So um, shadow is just like the significant half of light, right? It's the side effect of light. And the amount of shadow is the key to the mood that you want to portray. And generally speaking, there are four lighting patterns that we borrow from photography. And these lighting patterns goes from the one with very less shadow to the one with a very dense and heavy shadow. And it goes from paramount, as you can see. Paramount lighting is also called beauty lighting, clamshell lighting. This can be recognized by the butterfly-like shadow that normally you can see under the nose of the subject. And as you can see, you have a shadow just right under the nose. And to understand this lighting patterns, simply, how do you call it? Imagine a light source right on top of your subject, 45 degree in front of your subject, and try to move it in an axis 360 degrees. And by doing so, you are effectively creating these different lighting patterns. So for example, when you have the light source right in front of your subject, 45 degree on the top, you have the butterfly lighting. And then by moving it to the side, you have the shadow under the nose, but it's not touching the shadow coming from the cheek. And this is called the loop lighting. And then when you move the light further, you will get a light that you probably seen a lot and got its a signature from the triangle on the cheek, and it's called the Rembrandt lighting. And then when you move the light further back, you will see a split lighting. The split lighting has the most shadow in the image, right? So knowing these patterns will help you to build mood. But in today's discussions, let me show you how to create this lighting patterns. So for example, here I would like to show you a really nice piece of app that you can use to play around to see your lighting patterns, to establish your lighting pattern. It's called the Satellite 3D, right? So here we have one light, and it is right above the subject, 45 degree in front of the subject. And as you can see, when we are moving the light a little bit, on the right preview, you can really see the distinctive butterfly-like shadow under her nose, under the nose of the model, right? And then this is the paramount or the beauty lighting or the clamshell lighting um, patterns. And normally when you try to do the beauty lighting or the clamshell lighting, you put a fill light right under her chin, right, to soften the shadow. But in today's discussions, we'll just limit into one light source, not to complicate things. So you got the paramount light. When you move it a little bit more to the right, and you see the shadow under her nose, but it's not quite touching the shadow from the cheek, you got a loop lighting. And then when you move it forward, move it further to the side, and you start to get the triangle on her cheeks, you got the Rembrandt lighting. And then when you move it back, where you see half of the light, half of the face is in shadow, and half of the other face is in light, is in the lit side, you got the split lighting. And when you move it back, you have pretty much a backlit or a silhouette, right? And then when you move the light, you orbit the light into the other directions, you're coming back again from split, Rembrandt, loop, and then paramount. So that's all just that's all really all about lighting patterns. It's just the light moving into different directions in your subject. And understand that normally when you have subjects in front of your camera, you have two sides of the subject, right? The broad side and then the narrow side or the short side. If you want to establish a broad side, you have a broad side. It just means like the lit part is closest to the camera, while the short side means that the lit side is further away from the camera. So when somebody is trying to establish the lighting patterns and saying, hey, I'm trying to achieve a short loop light, it's just literally a loop light patterns with a light on her left, right? So I hope that this illustrations can help you to demystify the different names of lighting patterns. But be aware that knowing this can help you to understand the different names of lighting patterns, but will not make you a master of lightings. You still have to practice it yourself, try to experiment with it. And by knowing this, I hope that it can get you into a better positions. So let us close this. The next thing, after talking about lighting patterns, the most important questions that you need to ask yourself is how much detail that you want to see in your shadow. And a lot of photographers and cinematographers judge the amount of details in their shadow by using what they call the lighting ratio or the contrast ratio. And in photography, lighting ratio is just the difference between the light, the lit, and then the dark part of the image, which is measured in terms of stops. And normally the difference, it's just the difference between two lights, the key light and then the fill light. Why fill light is there? The fill light is used to control the shadow, to make your shadow brighter or even darker, right? So in photography, normally there are this lighting ratio that you normally see. It's called 1:1, 2:1, 4:1, 8:1, and so on and so forth. 1:1, it just means that the key light is as strong as the fill light. So you literally have no shadow, right? And then 2:1 means that the fill light is one stop under the key. And then 4:1 is just the fill light, two stops under the key, and so on and so forth. And by using lighting ratios and then the lighting patterns and you name it, this method allows photographers to recreate the setup easily without having to draw the how do you call it, the lighting setups and so on and so forth. But literally, you can just use the lighting ratio and the name of the lighting patterns and what type of lighting is it, right? So to give you another example about contrast ratio, let us go into this website that is called the ZFork. It's quite hard to pronounce, but this is such a nice tools that you can try. So here I have a light which I have set on the right of the subject, and by creating and this is a key light that I try to create the exposure with, and I put red gel to differentiate with a fill light that I will create in front of him. So I have a fill light with blue gel right in front of my subject. And what we are seeing here is that the key light is as strong as the fill light. So we have 1-to-1 lighting ratio. And as I reduce the lighting power in the second light, in my fill light, now I have 2-to-1, or the fill is one stop under the key. And then if I drop it further, now I'm 2 stops under the key, so 4-to-1. And then now I'm 3 stops under the key, and so on until you got a dense shadow with the 16-to-1 lighting ratio. All right. So in cinematography, this lighting ratio is the lighting ratio used in cinematography is not quite the same as the lighting ratio in photography. In photography, normally people say 2-to-1, 4-to-1, 8-to-1. But in cinematography, normally the difference in light, the fill and key light, is what get communicated. So if the key and shadow are the same exposure, it's in photography it's called 1-to-1, but in cinematography it's normally called the flat lighting. And if the key is half a stop above, then you just call it half a stop, right? So the interesting thing in cinematography is that, I mean, in portraiture, in photography, we just normally deal with human faces, right? Human face, the lighting patterns in human face, the difference between the highlight and the shadow in human face. But in cinematography, the subject is moving. And that's why in cinematography, sometimes the other measurement that needs to be taken is the difference between the lit side or the subject and the background. And by using this understanding, uh, because of the difference of the subject and background, now there are another two of types of lighting in cinematography that you normally see, and those are the high key lighting or the low key lighting. And high key, as you can see in this example, is normally used when you want to show something cheerful and similar to the paramount lighting before. High key lighting has very less shadow in the scene, right? The key to understand the high key lighting styles is to try to see the difference between the subject and the background. When the background matches the foreground in the correct exposure, or the background is overexposed, then you can understand that this is a high key lighting style. And this lighting style, since it's airy and it's light, it's normally used in a sitcom or a romantic comedy movie or drama, something like that. And the counterpart of that is the low key lighting. And low key lighting, again, to understand low key lighting, simply compare the subject and the background. So when the background is underexposed compared to the subject, or even the background is black, regardless of how bright the subject is, this is a low key lighting. And then another form of this styles is silhouette. Silhouette is just literally when the background is correctly exposed or overexposed, but the foreground is underexposed. Your subject is underexposed or even black. And everything else than this are the normal lighting.
Like me in
So
this case.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope that sheds a little light into lighting topics. And yeah, now I will pass the baton to Diego. And Diego would like to talk more about creating perspective. So Diego, please.
Yeah. So first I want to say that it, all what you must say is really important for a colorist to know, because I know maybe you're saying no, I'm working in a software and I'm working in a dark room. Do I need to understand the light? And yes, it's so important. It's so important that you know the different patterns, the different type of lights that photographers use on set, because based on that, you can fix it, you can create it, and also you can talk with him the same language. This is so important. This is so important. In most of the cases, the cinematographer sits next to you, and he starts talking about like how high key and so on, silhouette and so on. So you need to understand the languages. And Max was talking about the different type of lighting. And when the first thing that I do when I'm talking with a cinematographer and I start grading, I start asking him about how was his lighting setup. And he said to me, okay, I have here a light at the right, then I use another light here, I have another temperature, I have some RE lights, I have some Fresnel. So this is great to understand how the scene was recorded. And also, as a tip, I want to say that I don't like to go so much to set to recording. I like to be more in the dark room. But when I go like for an hour or 2 hours or maybe three, and I stop looking at all the work that they are doing, moving the lights, moving the lights, like creating patterns, fixing the light also. And this or that workflow give me many lights of how the scene was recorded and also how can I improve it in grading. So thank you, and I will definitely say to you, please, if you have any doubts, rewatch all what Max say because you explained it really, really great, Max. Thanks.
Thank you, Diego. I mean,
Yeah.
feel free to ask me any questions. You can send me to training, send questions to me to training at maxon.net. I'll try my best to help.
Yes.
Awesome.
So do I have sharing the screen right now?
You have the right to share the screen right now, Diego.
Wait. No, I don't have.
All right, let me check if I can make you organizer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are organizer already. You should be able to see screen. You should be able to share your screen.
Because it's saying to me that it's showing the screen right now. Okay, wait. So now
Oh,
just
let
or or
me stop
or
sharing.
give me yes or stop share.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I still don't have the button. Hey, change presenter, screenshot. Wait. Or can you allow me? Can you? Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. Yeah,
So
thanks.
I have to make you presenter. Oh man, it's like a couple of webinars already, and still the technical difficulties. I'm sorry, guys.
Don't worry, it's okay. So yeah, so all the lighting things is really important. But one of the things that I think that definitely is going to help us in the grading process or in even the photography process is that we all time looks that we look in 3D. We look in a and we live in a 3D world. I don't know if you have tried the experiment that we have two eyes, and the reason that we have two eyes, or the advantage is that we look the perspective. And for example, if I take one of my eye and I put it here and I throw one ball and then I try to get it, I will not get the sense of depth. So in some way, the two eyes give us like that sense of depth that is really important to understand what is going to happen. But the main problem of photography and let's think that of our images is that we look at them in a computer screen or in a film, in a theater, and all of them are in 2D. So the first thing that we need to understand, and this is also the photographer, is that we need to simulate a 3D world into a 2 screen. So to do that, in most of the cases, we need to play with perspective. So probably here you're going to remember in the high school lessons when you were like painting with perspective and you have like 1 point perspective, 2 point, 3 points. And this is so important because when you take your camera and you want to decide, okay, I'm going to take a picture of, I don't know, here of the sea, of here of the city that you look at there, you need to think of the perspective point that are going to give us depth to the brain so that the brain understands that it's a 3D scene. So always think in perspective, and as a colorist, always look at the way to how to take advantage of that perspective. Also, there are another clues that are really important in grading that are going to give us also that sense of depth. And one of the most important one is contrast. So what is contrast? Contrast is the difference between black and white. If it's gray, there is no contrast. If it's just black and white right here, there is a lot of contrast. But in most of the cases, we just think that, okay, contrast is just one thing, black and white, and no more. But definitely, there are more type of contrast. And one of the contrasts that we use a lot is the color contrast. So here I have some images. When you see, for example, this color contrast, the red and the blue, and you achieve the color contrast based on the colors that you see in the color wheel and that are one side to another, one side to another. Here you can see another one, really similar, green, sorry, red, and also blue. And here, one similar, yellow, and also blue. Color contrast is, we use it a lot. And in most of the cases, you think, okay, who made this or who are the people that are taking care of this color contrast? Probably the first person is going to be the art director that is going to select these colors on set. Then the probably the, let's think, the photographer that is going to put the light, and finally the colorist, because as a colorist we can even increase or decrease this color, and we can in some way like put more contrast to the scene as the way we want it, so we can manipulate this part. There is also one contrast that is really interesting, that is the shade contrast. The shade contrast, let's think that is, as the name says, is that different shapes in one same frame give us also a sense of depth. So for example, we can look at this here, and we can see different shapes. For example, this light, also here the face of her that is circle. Here we can see there are a lot of shapes, a lot of shapes. And this, for example, I will put it in big screen, and you just feel the depth. You feel the depth. And also what I want you to check here is that we usually play a lot here at the beginning or at the first part of the screen. We see more colors or more saturated colors. And here we see less colors or less saturated. So we play with that. Also with focus. Focus is so important to get that depth of field in the scene. We have also another one. Let me come here. That is, oh, look at this one. This one is really nice because if you notice, one of the, here we don't have a lot of perspective. When we have shots like, let me go back here. By the way, all of these shots are downloaded from shotdeck.com. If we come back here to this scene, we see a lot of perspective. So our brain knows that this is far away and this is closer. Also here, in this one over here, we see 2 points, and here we see a part. But in this shot that is here, we don't see any, or yes, it's the only perspective we see is here. All is in some way flat. So what is giving us like the sense that there are some different objects, and that is that this person is farthest than the bottles, is the shapes. The shapes are really important. Also, talking about that depth of field, there is another type of contrast that is the shade contrast. And I like this one a lot because it's not based on the shades that the image was recorded or that the image had, even the shadows. We had different, or we can check what is closest or what is farthest. In this way, we see that this part can be closer to the screen, also here. And one that I like also, that is at the end, you will notice that most of the images joins all of type of contrast in one. But as a colorist, we can take advantage of these ones. And we can take advantage and we can increase it. I like this one, and it's the proximity contrast also. And look at this one here. So here is, we see, in some way we see a yellow, like a yellow image, but we know that the mirrors are at the in the farthest part of the screen because of the proximity. And also look at here. These ones we can say that joins the proximity contrast with the shade contrast, and also has some shapes that give us the a lot of sense of depth in this part. So here we can increase it in color grading. We will show how, but always think about it. Always think before grading an image, think on how was the lighting setup, and then how is the contrast applying, because the first objectives of a colorist is to create depth or to increase depth. Always remember that. Are you there, Max?
Yeah, always to increase
Yeah, there you
depth.
go.
That's amazing, man. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Diego. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me make myself presenter and show my screen. All right. I hope you can see my screen again. You're supposed to be seeing a PowerPoint presentations again. Um, yeah. Now that we already understand some of the lighting principles and some of those principles to create perspective in our scene, in our 2D media, let us jump into the amazing tools that you can use inside Resolve to tackle your primary corrections. And this is called the HDR tool. But again, the same thing apply like before. I would like to take you to a photography land before jumping into the color grading. Let us borrow a lot of stuff from photography today. And
Yeah.
that is, if you've done photography before, I assume that you somehow heard the term Ansel Adams zone system. This is a system that was developed by landscape photographers called Ansel Adams, and this was discussed thoroughly in 3 books: the camera, the negative, and the print. And this system is used to get your exposure correctly on the locations, and also give you some guidance when you want to dodge and burn in the lab, when you want to process your film, right? And the zone system allows you to dissect your image into several different tonal range, 10 to be exactly, 11 zones to be exactly. And yeah, and this zone system is really helpful. It's really helpful guide, especially when you are starting out as a colorist. And this is what you see in the zone system, right? There is a gradient that running from black to white. And in the zone system, you divide the gradient that running from black to white into 11 different zones. and the zones goes from 0 to 10. The zone 0 and zone 10s are pure black and pure white, and there's supposed to be no texture at all in that zone. And then in zone 1, this is a near black zone. And then zone 2, this is the dark black, and this is where you start to see texture in your image. And then zone 3 is the very dark gray, and zone 4 is literally the lower mid, and zone 5 is where you want your exposure at. This is the 18% gray, or the middle gray in photography. Normally the gray card is in this zone. And by using this system in photography, you can expose for certain part of the image, and then the other zones, the other area of the photography will fall into different zones. And to enhance that, you can dodge and burn later on in the lab to put all those different sections into those different zones, right? But what I want to point you out, it's literally mind-blowing when I see this for the first time. If you take this zone 0 to zone 10, and this image, you rotate it to the left, anti-clockwise 90 degree, don't you see the similarity? If you compare it to the waveform that you see in Resolve. So use this as not as a hard and fast rules, but use it as a loose guidance, you know. So whenever you want to put your subject, try to put it in the zone 5 or zone 4, and those are different skin complexity. And then blue sky, if you want to, you can put it in the zone 6 or zone 7. Try it, experiment with it, right? So if we go to Resolve, and if we go to this image over here, you can see all the different steps in the waveform that goes from 0, pure black, to pure white, right? And normally, when you want to tackle a specific zones or specific tonality in the image, the primary corrections tools will not cut it, because primary corrections tools, as we already see in the first week, it has the widest coverage of tonality. So for example, if we are moving the lift, the data is pivoted in the pure white, but all the other data got affected. And in the gain, as you can see, it's mostly affecting the highlight area and pivoting to the pure black. And in the gamma, it's pivoting both in the black and white. So how do you target those specific zones? You could target those specific zones using Keyer or qualifier, but then with Resolve 17, there is new tool which is so awesome, that is called the High Dynamic Range palette. And this high dynamic range tools, it looks similar to your primary wheels, right? If you go to your primary wheels, you have lift, gamma, and gain, and then offset control. And in HDR wheel, you have 6 different zones plus 1 global wheel. And to understand this tools, you can, how do you call it? Click this button, and then you will see the detail of this tool. So you have black area, dark, shadow, light, highlight, and specular. So to simply understand this tool is that the tools is divided into 2 different regions: the dark regions, the shadow regions, and then the light regions. So the light and the shadow regions has the most coverage, and then after that, the shadow regions will be divided further into dark and black. And then also the light regions will be divided again into highlight and specular. So for example, if you want to use this tool, there is this small button right next to every wheels. And this buttons, you can literally use it to preview the area which is going to be targeted by the wheels. So if I'm doing it on the black area, you just literally see only the black area got affected, and the dark area is the black area plus some more area, and then the shadow has the most coverage, but it's going to the left. And if you see the graph in your histogram, you see that this bar is representing the shadow and it's facing to the left. And you can also target, adjust the area of coverage. And to do so, if you want to adjust the area of the coverage, you can simply use the highlight mode, for example, and you can start to divide your image. So these are my shadow, and then this is my dark area, and this is my black area. And then you can also go to your light, for example, and starting from here, you start to divide all the light part in your image. You start to have the highlight area and then the specular. As you can see at the moment, the specular is not showing anything because it is over 100 nits and we are working in the SDR, right? Which is limited to 100 nits. But if I'm bring it back below 100 nits, you can start to see the area that I am covering. So if I'm turning it off again, how many dynamic range is this tool covering? If you ask that questions, you can see here in right below the tools, there's a middle point in 0, and it goes to over -8 to +8. So literally the tools is covering effectively 16 stops of range, right? And then also each wheels has its own control, the exposure control. So for example, if we're going to the shadow area, you have your exposure control, and as you adjust it, you can also see the graph is moving, and separate saturations control for every single zones. What's nice about this is that apart from the possibility that you can adjust the range of the zones, you also have the controls to adjust how soft that adjustment goes in that specific zones. And that is by manipulating this fall off. And as you can see, as I'm increasing the fall off, see that the red area is also increased in the histogram. And as I increase the fall off, the curve got smoother. You see that? So that is the HDR tool. How do we use it really in the image? So for example, if we are going to this image, by the way, this fantastic clips are provided to us today from the colleague of us in Maxon, Dr. Sasi. I think he is in the audience today. Thank you very much, Dr. Sasi, for letting us use your amazing clips. These are our 3D clips. And if you go to your waveform, you start to see that, hey, there are very high highlights over there, and the shadow is not touching 0, right? So how do I handle this type of image if I want to work with HDR tool? So for example, let me just reset this. This is the image only with the color space transformations LUT. And this is the log image, the raw image that you see. And then by applying LUT, by applying a conversions LUT from red log 3G10 to Rec 709, I have this type of image. So for example, if I want to play further with my image, instead of using the primary wheels, I can try to target this specific zones with HDR tool. And to do so, I can activate my highlight mode. And then if I'm playing around with the dark mode, you can now literally see which area I am targeting at the moment. So I can divide, this is my dark mode, this is my dark area, and this is my pure black. As you can see, there's no pure black in the image at the moment, so that's fine. So I will be just rearranging my dark area, and then shadow. It's supposed to be only in the shadow, so it's just there. And then my light area should be there between the shadow. And then that is my highlight. So as you can see, I'm literally only targeting this fire that coming from the balloon, and that would be my highlight. So after adjusting those tonal range into assigning those different tonal range into this HDR tool, I can start play around with my exposure control, for example, my global wheel. By changing the exposure in the global wheel, I can literally increase the exposure in the scene. And by doing so, you also notice that I am start to clipping the highlight area. And since I already map those area before, I can now just go back to my highlight wheel and reduce the exposures only in the highlight area. And if I want to reduce the saturations in that area, I can also do so by just using the saturations wheel that comes in the highlight wheel. And if I want to drop my shadow a little bit more, I can also drop my shadow. There are, however, differences between the primary wheels, and the difference between the how do you call it, the algorithm difference between primary wheels and then the HDR tools. One of the difference is the global control and then the contrast control. So for example, if we're going back to our ramp grayscale, if we are going to use our contrast in the primary wheels, and as you can see, if I'm adjusting the contrast, adding my contrast, it creates this kind of S-curve contrast style in my waveform. If I reset that and reset the node, and if I'm going back to my HDR, and if I create my contrast in my HDR tools, as you can see, it's pivoting in the black, and the black is untouched, but it moves freely on the highlight and on the white side, all right? So let us reset that. And also, another difference is that the offset and then the global wheel. So if I'm trying to play around with the global wheel, as you can see, the data is moved freely without being pivoted in the black or white. And if I'm using gain wheel, you can see it's only moving the data in the highlight area and pivoting to black. So if we are going back to HDR tool and try to do the same thing with the exposure control in the global wheel, you will notice that it is not behaving like the offset wheel, but it's similar, but not quite the same like the gain operations. The black is still pinched, but it is harder to clip the area in the lower regions over there. So that is the difference between the um, primary wheels and the HDR tools. So if you have time, do this test. Use the grayscale images and try to play around with these tools. And by doing so, you will be able to see what actually these tools are doing. So I hope that shed some informations to you. And I think Diego want to show us some tips to about Luma Keyer. Isn't that right, Diego?
Yeah, so first I want to say that when the HDR palette appeared, we were so excited. We were so excited because what we were doing, like with trying to select many of the zones in an image, we were doing it by using a Luma Keyer. But now with the
Exactly.
HDR tool, it's like we don't need a Luma Keyer anymore. That one that I'm going to show you, I still use it a lot. I will show
Is
you.
it safe to conclude that is it safe to assume that HDR tool is just a set of is a presets of Luma Keyer with some extra tools?
Yes, yes, even a lot of extra tools, definitely. But it's so similar. It's so similar. And now with the HDR, that we can preview more zones of the images, the HDR palette is perfect for that. Wait. Hey, Max. Hello, hello.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, now you see me. Okay. But before going to the Luma Keyer, I want to show you some things that I found interesting when Max was talking about the Ansel Adams system and so on. And one of the tools that photographers use on set is the force color. So when you apply a force color, for example, to this image, you can find the force color here in the OpenFX, and you write force color and you apply it here. You can see that a lot of interesting colors that appear in the image, and you see, well, what is happening here? But this force color is a tool that some photographers use it in onset to know what is the correct exposure. And because you have it also as a plugin in Resolve, you can take advantage of this tool. For example, in this case, I will have, you can select the camera. We have the specific BMD cameras, also the camera mode, the ISO. And what I found interesting here is that you can also select show labels. So when I select show labels, it's refreshing. Wait a minute. Come on. It's going to appear here. So probably you see here some of the things that Max were saying to you about the Ansel Adams. So here it's really as easy actually to read a false color, because he will say to you where is the middle glare, where the stop, where the light, the skin needs to be, the light skin, and also here where is the clipping part, or is the clipping part. So for example, if you apply this false color to an image into a second node, what you can do in the first node is just can start like exposing your image. You will notice it's kind of slow, my computer, yeah, now it's updating. So you can start moving your offset, and here you can feel, or you can see the colors. And for example, here, everything is pinky because it's below the black detail loss. If I move it also here to this part, now everything is, or most of the thing are red, because I'm in that white clipping part. When I start moving like in more, let's see, in a more not so strong way, we can see, let me just move it here. We can see that, for example, the skin needs to be around here, where I see this part here. And also in this part, I see that the blacks are, I'm losing detail in the blacks, so I can increase a little bit the lift. And when I'm increasing the lift, it's low, come on. Okay, there you go, so much. When I'm increasing the lift, you will notice that now I don't have any details losing. And also in this part, I don't have anything white clipping. If I then turn off this tool, you will notice that in some way, let's think that I'm a correct exposure, because I'm using this tool that is giving me a good sense of way of how I'm moving the image and where the skin needs to be, and where I'm, for example, the middle blade here and the skin in this part, I think it's okay. So I don't know. I always think that, for example, in my case, I don't usually use so much in image, but I have a friend colorist that use it all the time. And all of the first step that he usually do is put this one and then start moving leaf, gamma, gain, offset to make a correct exposure of the image. Also, Max was talking about the 10 steps, and there is also another tip that you can make, is that you have these 10 steps, you can put it here, and you can decrease a little bit or the opacity. And here you can say, okay, the skin needs to be in one part, the skin is in another. So this is another way like to overlap the 10 step into an image. And finally, just to go back to the, or to start talking about the Luma Keyer, another tip like to start exposure or to make the exposure of the image in a, let's think, in a more simple way, is to decrease the saturation. And here you can see clearly what are the blackest part of the image, what are the whitest, and also where is the skin. Based on that, you can see more clear if you want to see, for example, the skin a little bit dark, or here more. What happened? My resolve is lazy today. Okay, there you go. Okay, so here you can start increase it, and then after finishing, when you feel that you have like the correct exposure, what you do is to disable this node, and then you can compare, start comparing, and so on. Also, this, for example, in my way, I just show you like three ways of exposure in the image: the first color, then the, the 10 steps, and also this one. In my normal workflow, I love this one. I love this one because remember, in the first class, Max talks about the cones and the roads that the eye have. And here, when the eye just see the light, he's taking is it doesn't the color doesn't interfere the exposure, so we can focus more in the blackest part or in the whitest part. So in most of the cases, I like to exposure an image with a black and white, with a black and white pattern. Okay, based on that, what I can do here is start talking about the Luma Keyer. So the Luma Keyer, we can say I can come here in this image here. The Luma Keyer is a way to separate frequencies of the image. It's just that. How we make it? We go here to the qualifier, and here in the qualifier you can select the luminance, or you can come here and select luminance. Based on that, what I usually like to do is I actually don't go here because I'm lazy. I just come here, and then I open the click in the highlight button here, and then move the low. And here is showing me all of the detail that is taken. Then after that, I make a low soft, and I will say, okay, I need to decrease a little bit more the light here. So because I have a Luma Keyer that is just taking that part, I will move to the primaries, and I will decrease here the light. Look, decrease or increase, something like that. To make a Luma Keyer that is based on the blacks is the same, is that we just open the highlight button, then decrease the height. We see at what point we have here, and then we see, okay, we want something here. Based on that, what I can do is, okay, let me just move this a little bit dark, something like that, where I can move here. So based on that, we make a Luma Keyer to affect the blacks and the whites. Also in Resolve, there are some presets that you will find it here. Let me check here. Yes, presets that here you can find chroma light, chroma dark, and chroma light and dark. So what these buttons do, if I select chroma light, what you will notice is that this one applies a Luma Keyer that is taking just in some way, the darkest part, and also is desaturating them. Let's apply the other one. Presets, for example, this one, chroma light, will be the opposite. There you go. Right. There you go. Chroma dark. So it's the opposite. It's making a selection of the whites, and here is decreasing like the saturation also of the whites. Also, you have the other one that is the preset here that is light and dark if you want to use it. But for example, in my workflow, I usually don't like to desaturate so much because what I usually do with the Luma Keyer and with the in the light and also in the shadow is to increase or decrease more than to saturate. So one workflow to create, in some way we want to create contrast in one image, is to create first a Luma Keyer that is going to affect the lights, for example, here. And then to make an outside node that is going to affect the darks. Here the light. And based on that, you can say, okay, I'm affecting here the light here, and then in the darks, I'm decreasing here the blackest part. Okay, something like that. But for example, probably you're thinking, okay, but you're spending some time, hola, you're spending some time like making a luminance, keyer, and so on. Can you speed up your workflow? So for example, in this way, I love to use power grades. For example, I will make a power grade here, and this power grade will be, let's see, Luma Keyers. And then, for example, if I want a power grade that is just affecting the light, this is just affecting the light. All I do is save this. Here will be light here. And also, I will make the opposite. This is just for the dark here. And based on that, I don't need to make this anymore. All I need is, for example, if in this shot I want to create a light here, I'm applying just here, and I'm moving this part, and there you go. Here I have a really fast Luma Keyer that is increasing in some way my specular lights. And if I want to make or affect the other part of the image, I will create an outside node. And with this outside node, I can decrease this part or a little bit here. So I use a lot. I use a lot the Luma Keyer for most of the things. And we were talking about Max that the HDR panel is a similar tool as the Luma Keyer. And yes, it is, because as Max told you, well, by clicking in this sun icon over here, you can see the part of the image that is affecting, and you can decrease it or increase it in the way that you want it. So it's the same. In some ways, it's up to your workflow. In my case, I still like to use more these ones because I have them, all of them, in here in some power grades. So I can start like applying them so fast and then modify it if I need it. So later we are going to mix the Luma Keyers, power windows, and so on to start making or start simulating more lighting tools in Resolve.
Yeah, that's amazing, Diego. And I think one more note about Power Grade is that Power Grade is accessible from different project, right? So if you have like multiple projects and you already set the Power Grade, and you can still access the very same Power Grade, although you are opening different project. Is that right, Diego?
Yes, Power Grade is available in all the projects inside the database.
Exactly. That's really nice one. And yeah, another
Yes,
note
there are
about
no questions. Yes,
yeah,
there are no questions.
there are no questions. We're good.
Good, good, that's good.
Awesome. So let me make myself presenter. All right. I hope you can see Resolve now. Right.
Yes.
All righty. And yeah, one more thing that I think I read in the manual about HDR tool, but I haven't shown you today, is that HDR tool is trying not to interrupt with the level of the saturations when you are creating a contrast with a HDR tool. Meanwhile, in the primary wheels, you are affecting the contrast, the saturations when you are playing around with the contrast. So yeah, that's the stuff that I forgot to mention before. And yeah, now let us move into another tool that you normally use to change the lighting or targeting image. based on the tonality or based on the regions of the image. You can also use this tools to literally breaking down all the part of the image into several parts. And this is the power window. And power window is just literally a collection of shapes that you can apply to your image. And then you can apply your corrections only in that area or the opposite of that area. So based on the descriptions, probably we can agree that this tool is a secondary correction tools because we are targeting a specific part of the image to make the corrections. And Power Window can be accessed in Resolve in this using this symbols over here. And it consists of different collections of shapes. You have the rectangle, the linear one. And then by default, at the moment, you are seeing a high visibility power window. I think if you're opening the default one, if you're not changing any settings, the power window will look like a white and gray, if I'm not mistaken. But you can change the settings of the power window to be this green and yellow to make it more visible in the preferences. So if you want to change that, you can simply go to DaVinci Resolve, Preferences, User, not the system, but user, and color. And you can check the high visibility power windows outline. So at the moment, if I'm check it off, it will look like that. So to make it more visible, let us just activate the high visibility power windows. So power windows, as you can see, there are several different shapes. And we have the linear, the circle, and also the polygon. And in the polygon, you can change the shapes. And you also have the curve to draw your custom windows. And you also have rectangle gradient power window. And in the gradient, it's a little bit different, but it is showing you the arrow is showing you the gradient area. So the area behind the green line will be the area that you're affecting, and then the arrow will be pointing will be the area of the gradient that you are establishing in your image. And let us just reset this one and stay with one Windows over here, and that is the circle. And in the power window, you can change the size, and there's an aspect ratio here, and also the control to move it, but you can also move it on the screen, and the control to change the softness. Normally, when you are using power window in a clip, let me show you in one clip. Normally, when we are using power window, we are sometimes there are many types, and there's many types of how you want many, how do you call it, many ways to use power windows. And there's nothing wrong or nothing right about how you use it. It really depends on your preference. And sometimes the most case that you normally see is that you can use power windows in many different parallel nodes. So let me just delete this, and let me show you the way you can use power windows in the parallel nodes, which will not, by using this method, you will not need to track your power windows because you are making a big adjustment that affecting the big part of your image. So in this image, I have the red clip, and I applied the conversion LUT and apply some balance. And let's do the balance together. And the balance that I'm doing is just by increasing the exposure, dropping the shadow area to increase the contrast, and just use the auto color balance, right? And there's one tip, I think if you missed the first week class, is that if you want to balance your image, you can use the qualifier, and then by pointing it in the area of your image, and by turning on the show RGB picker value, you'll be able to determine the amount of red pixel, the green pixels, and the blue pixels. And in this case, as you can see, I can try to use this area to balance my image. Now I have 182, 181, 183. That's good enough for me. So yeah. Now let us move into Power Window, and let we create a new node, and let's make another parallel node by pressing Alt P, or what is the counterpart in Mac for Alt? Is it functions? I don't know. I'm not a Mac user.
It's option. Yeah.
It is options. Okay. So yeah, Option P to create a parallel node, right? So, and here you can target a specific part of the image. For example, in this case, if I just want to darken the sky, I can target the sky either by using the circle window or linear window. But as we can see, we have gradient window before. So we can try to use the gradient window on the first node and adjust this. And to see the area that you're affecting, simply use the highlight mode again, right? So in this case, I want to darken my sky in one image, in one part. That's like, and the way to do that is that I can go to my primary wheels and reduce the gain in that area. And in the second node, maybe I can try to warm up the highlight area over here. And that is also simply by using another gradient. And I can just rotate it, use highlight mode to judge the area I am affecting, move it around, and pump up some orange in the highlight, or maybe move it around there. And then your imagination is the limit, right? So if you want to even darken the sky, you can also use this and then uh, darken the sky. But is this the only way to use Power Windows in a separate nodes? No, you can use Power Windows in many Power Windows, not just one, in one same node. So let us go back here into the gray, middle gray image. So let me reset this. By default, when you are using two different windows in one image, the correction that you apply into that area will be shared, or the correction, the default mode will be add. So if you are introducing red in these two areas, both of them will share the same properties. So if I'm changing it into magenta, both of the windows will be magenta. Changing it to blue, the same things, right? So let us stay in red. And there are two buttons that you need to know right next to the window itself, right? There is this invert button. So when I am inverting the power window, as you can see, the area outside of the power window get the corrections, but the area inside the power window didn't get the corrections. And one more thing that I want to show you is that you can subtract. So for example, if you want to do a corrections in this area, but if there's a movement and you don't want this, if the corrections to bleed into this area, you can always put the power window in subtract mode. So if there is a movement, the effect will not bleed into the second area. And That is different mode of power windows. By default, it is in add, and then you can change it into subtract, and then you can also invert the power windows. So let me reset this one. And another use of power windows is that you can try to accentuate the lighting patterns in your image. Um, for example, if you're working with a long form project and most of the or a talking head, and you already got your lighting patterns right, lighting ratios right, but there is just a small adjustment that you want to add the density in your shadow, and you just want to use the simplest possible method, you can always use a power window. So for example, here I have a clip that not much movement in it, simply just like that. As you can see, there's not much movement, and there's already a nice lighting patterns that you can see here. It's Rembrandt, and as you can see, it's a short Rembrandt because of the shadowy area is closer to the camera, and you can see the triangle signature. And if I just want to affect the shadow area only in this part, but without affecting the other area, I can just use power window. Sorry. And in this case, I can just use circle, change the aspect to 0, and literally make it bigger and adjust the softness, right? Turn on the highlight mode to see which area I am affecting, and turn it off again. And now I can do my adjustment only in this area. So if I just want to make my shadow darker, I can just go back to lift and start to play around with my lift control. And as I'm doing that, the other area outside of this power window is not affected. I'm only affecting the shadow inside the power window. And this is really helpful because this method is really fast if you work with a lot of clips. You don't need tracking. You don't need many other power windows that you need to put into your scene. Simply use one big power windows and affect, use it as a negative fill. That's the correct term. But then if you have a clip that have a lot of movement, so for example, let me just delete this. If you have a clip that has a lot of movement, for example, and you want to target a specific area, for example, you want to brighten the face, or you want to relight the subject into your scene, you can also use power window, but you will need to pair it with tracking, for example. So using one big power window without tracking, sometimes it's good when you have long form project, but using power window with a tracking to target specific area, sometimes it's really powerful, especially when you are working with a short forms or commercials or something that you need to target specific area and change the state of that region. So for example, here, let us apply both, right? So let us create another node and create a parallel node. And in this case, for example, if I just want to make a vignette, you can make a vignette with a window, but you can also try different stuff. Maybe you can try introducing a negative fill, like what we already see before. So for example, I'll use this circle and then change the aspect to 0, move it to the left, change the softness, adjust the size, and then maybe I will reduce the gain in this area. Okay, and in the second node, I'll create another circle power window, reduce the aspect to 0, move it to the right, and adjust the size. And then again, reduce the gain. So another tip that is really nice for you if you want to work with power window is that you can turn off the outline of power window while adjusting it. So you can do so by turning it off here in this area, select off, and then start adjusting it. And Once you see the shape, it means like, hey, I'm going too far. Maybe back it off a little bit. So, and then now, for example, if I want to if I want to brighten her face, relighting her face, because she's looking into a screen, and as you can see in the boy part, there's a red light that comes into his arm, and probably if I want to make it that the light is coming from the screen, her face needs to be a little bit more reddish, right? Because she's facing the screen. And we can relight that using the power window. And again, let us create a power window. Now at this moment, it's not showing any power window because it's off, right? So let us select the power window and reduce the softness, adjust the size. And I just want to target her face. Okay. And from now on, I can play around with the softness and maybe rotate it a little bit. And as before, as I told you before, maybe turn off the outline and start to do the adjustment to see how much adjustment you are introducing to your image. So in this case, I want to brighten the gain, as you can see, and then maybe introduce some red there. So this is before and after. And I think you agree that now it looks that she's facing a screen that pushing out a red light. But the thing is, this is a moving clip, right? There are a lot of movement in the clip. So for example, if you play the clip, the window is not attached to her face, and you want the window to be attached to her face. And to do that in Resolve, you will need to track your window, right? So let us go back to the beginning and repositions our window. And then we can move to track. By default, the mode is in the cloud tracker and the clip mode. So Diego will explain you better, explain you later on about the difference between tracking in clip and frame, or the point tracker and then cloud tracker. But at the moment, let me show you how you can use tracking with power windows. So I have a windows on her face with the adjustment that I quite like, and I want to track it forward, right? So you can simply do so by tracking forward. And as you can see, there's an options that you can select. Literally, this is the options that you're telling a tracker that, hey, there's a pan movement in the camera, there's a tilt movement, there's a zoom, rotate, or perspective 3D. And I don't think there's a 3D movement that needs to be calculated by the tracker. So that's why I switch it off, right? And I can start to track it forward. And remember, I'm in the clip mode. And as you can see, the window is changing the size, right? And if you want to refine your trackings, you can go to frame mode and then rewind your track, right? So for example, in this case, I want the window slightly smaller and slightly rotated to the left. And as you can see, as I am changing the window, it is introducing a new keyframe. So all your changes is recorded into the tracking. So if I move back, all good. Maybe here, reposition it a little bit. There, make it a little bit smaller probably. Okay, I'm pretty much fine. And now, if we play, it looks fine, right? I think you agree that the adjustment looks okay-ish. But what I want to point you out is that in this clip, and as you can see, there is this movement from the boy that getting into this softness area of this power window. At this moment, I mean, maybe it's not a big deal at this time. So for example, if I'm turning it off and before and after, it's not bleeding in too much. But what if you have this case? So for example, let me turn it on again, the outline. So what if you have a bigger window, for example, something like that, and maybe with a harsher adjustment, let's put some more red. And if it's bleeding into his forehead, remember I showed you before that you can add nodes, you can add windows in the same node, and you can change the mode, right? So for example, this is the best case that you can do the stuff that I'm telling you before, using two power windows in the same node and changing it into subtractive mode. So I will use my power curves, and then I'll just draw some shapes around the boy, maybe something like this. And by default, as you can see, both Windows has the same corrections because the default mode is in the add mode, right? Let me just adjust the softness inside and softness outside, and then I'll move back to track. Gosh, yeah, maybe something like that. And then now let's track it forward. I'm pretty happy with that. So now we can go to that screen, the scene, the frame where the both windows are intersecting, and here where the fun thing happens. You can just simply click one button to deal with this, and that is by using the subtractive mode. Now, whenever this window is intersecting with other windows, all the effects will not bleeding into the part of the forehead of the boy. So yeah, that's just another tip of how you can use power window.
Great. That one is nice. That one is really nice. And I want to ask you something, Max. Can you go to the shot number 8?
Yes.
So for example, here is, and we're going to mix one technique. I'm
Yeah.
improvising this part, Max, but I'm sure it's
No
going to be
problem.
great. So for example, if you notice when Max decreased a little bit the gamma was taking like the mids part, also the blacks and also the lights. But in some cases, we want to be more specific. So what we do is we mix the power window with a Luma Keyer. So in this shot, can you make a Luma Keyer that is just taking the blacks?
Yeah. So I'm just turning off the hue and saturations and turning on the
Highlight mode. Yeah.
And there you go. Oh, sorry, the blacks.
Yeah, the
The
blacks.
other way around.
The other way. There you go. You move it,
And
then you move
there
it.
you go. And then now I will
Yeah, a
do
little
the
bit
high
more.
stop.
Yeah. Yes, always soft. Always try to soft.
Always make it soft. And
Yeah.
that's literally the black. And high
Yeah.
soft. And
Probably a
that's
little bit more. Move the height more to the right. More. Like this, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit
So you
less.
can still
Okay.
you can still retain the triangle of highlights on her
Yes.
cheek.
So that's when we mix. That's when we mix, because if you look at our faces right now, Mac's face and my face, you can see that we have some lights that are coming, but we also have some darker and some light parts.
Yeah.
So the only way that we can fix them, or we can isolate the darkest or lightest part, is by creating Luma Keyers and adjusting them, and then lifting or increasing the amount of light that we want
Inside a power window.
inside a power window. Yes, yes, and that's the perfect mixture. Power window and Luma Keyer.
And it doesn't require tracking. That's what's nice, because if you have like plenty of clips that you need to do so, it's pretty light to your machine, right?
Yes, and it's a natural light. What you need to know is we are applying a natural light that is, and this is giving us depth. When we
Yeah.
don't use a Luma Keyer and we just light a power window, it will be like full of light inside the purse. But when we filter with the Luma Keyer, it's giving us depth, and that is so important.
So this is before, and that is after.
That is after. This more cosmetic, also is more natural than just applying a window that is giving light, and that's it. Good.
Awesome.
Okay.
So
So
Diego, do you have another tricks that you want to show us today?
yes, definitely. We have almost 30 minutes, but I'm going to show you some more tips for you
Awesome. Let me
to
make you
share.
a presenter, Diego.
Yeah. Oh wait.
All right.
Can you do it again? I put
Oh,
not yet. I select not yet. Can you do it again?
okay, let me make myself presenter.
All right. Sorry. Sorry.
No problem. And now I'll make you presenter.
And now you're a presenter. Yes.
Now you are a presenter. Okay.
There you go. There you go. Okay.
Awesome.
Perfect. So we were talking about the mixture of light, Luma Keyer, and Windows. But I want you to show you something really basics that I learned from one of my mentors. Let me actually come back here. And it's all the times that you do lighting, for example, here, things that all the lights that you see in the nature are not lasers. So what I mean about lasers, that most of the lasers are almost spotlights, but really,
Mhm.
really spot. But in the nature, we don't see spotlights. All the nature, all the lights we see, they have depth. So always use a lot of soft. And what you will find when you give a lot of depth to your window is that if the window does not have depth, it will be a 2D, in this case, a 2D circle. If it's with a lot of soft, now it will be a sphere. So that's what we are doing when we are like adding that soft in the lights. Always add a lot of soft. Always add a lot of soft. That's absolutely important that you need to know. Okay, so talking about Windows, I will also tell you that I was coming, or I came to color from VFX. So when I was in VFX, we do mask. We do mask all the time, and we try to roto everything. We try to roto everything. And my favorite window wasn't circles, square. My favorite window was at that time this one, because I was rotoing everything. Then I understand that in grading, we don't need to roto. We don't need to be so exactly. We need to create windows. And the best way to see or to understand what or how to use Windows is to go outside. Go outside. Look at the natural lights that the world is creating all around, and also go on set and do how the cinematographer is moving the lights. That way you can replicate these ones here.
Can I say something on that, Diego?
Definitely,
I think,
definitely.
yeah, going outside and how do you call it? Looking
And see
into
the
the real
world.
light and experiencing the world is really important. I think what's his name again? Roger Deakins even said the same thing. Before he was a director of photography, he used to go out fishing all days, and he experienced the sunset or sunrise a lot of times, and he started to notice the difference in color and difference in brightness. And I think he also shared this story in his podcast. If you are interested, I think the podcast is called Team Deacons or something like that. It's
Yeah.
really interesting story to know that even him uh, giving you the same advice is really pushing for the same advice.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Go
I,
out.
I I will say that yes, go out. Not all is in YouTube or in internet. Go out. So based about that, now that we're talking about that masters, I want to share with you one. This is a tutorial you can put it in YouTube that is called Lost Ready Revenant. One of the best colorists around there, that is Steve Scott. In this tutorial, he shared us how he used. Let me show here how he used lighting and the combination of Luma Keyers in the grading of the Revenant. This is a great tutorial because the Revenant, for example, let me come back here. I will.
Fantastic movie, by the way.
Yes, the Revenant is a movie that, in most of the cases, it wasn't recorded with many lights. So what he did, he had a lot of like artists that was doing rotoing and many shapes, and then send it to him. And you will see, for example, here the process. This is exactly what Max was doing: a shape and a Luma Keyer. And this is so natural. This is so natural. I invite you definitely to see this video. It's great about how you can use many different shades of lighting, and also the Luma Keyer, and definitely increase what the DOP want from set, and also tracking. This is, look at here. It's not a alpha completely. It's an alpha that has texture and has depth. So this is so important. Okay, so based on that, Max at the beginning of the presentation was talking about that in some cases we have lighting patterns that some DOPs use them in front of the light to make these kind of textures, as you see them, and that will give definitely another sense or will help to the story. Why not? You can see there are a lot of these ones, and there are some photographers that still use it. So the question can be,
Yeah.
can we use it as a colorist, or can we have some similar tools? So based on the techniques that Max showed us, that is creating shapes and also intersecting them. For example, I did one here that is that one that you see here, and I can apply it to one shot. Definitely, I need to refine this, like these shapes that are here. But also, for example, I have this one that is full of circles, but it's this one that's here. And also, let me come back here. Also, this one, I will need to add more soft here. But these are similar shapes as the ones that we have here. Really, really similar. So,
And,
for
and
example, yeah,
and to add on top of that, I think you can also see that patterns in the nature, right, Diego? For example, if you
yes,
go in the bright day and stand under the tree, you start to see the dapple light, and it's similar pattern.
yes, definitely, definitely. I mean, for example, right now I'm in the beach. This is, if I go down, is the beach, and I love to see all the patterns that the sun, the clouds, the palms are creating, and we need to take advantage of that. That is probably, I will say, that is the most beautiful part of grading, is to take advantage of, or to recreate what we see in the real world. Okay, so based on that, what I can do is I can do the same as the Luma Keyer, but I can create a power window, in this case with cookies. I will, for example, save this one. And if I go to a normal shot, for example, here, let's come here. If I go to normal shot, I can load this. Usually, for example, right now you are thinking, wow, Diego, but you have many, many circles. Don't worry, when we grade, we have a second monitor that we see the clean image without many of these things. And the way you to enable the clean image without the UI, like interface without the GUI, yeah, the GUI things of the spheres is to go back. Hey, I forgot it. View, window outline, on, or you can say only UI, and that way you will disable in your broadcast monitor or in your color monitor the disperse or all the mess that I'm doing here. So based on that, what you can say, okay, I want to add a little bit more of texture, so I can add here, and I can add more of texture, and what you see is here. You will see that I have some here, and I create in there. Also, I can do the opposite. Wait, I can even decrease this a little bit. Then full screen, and you will see that now I have parts that are darker. So I can start playing with these patterns, and I do this a lot. This is actually not a tip from me, it's from my friend Javier. But when he showed this to me, I was like, wow, it's great. It's great. For example, also this one, and you can have them here, and you can say, okay, let's move with them a little bit.
It
Now
looks
you
really
can see.
organic.
Yes, definitely. And you can also mix this with a Luma Keyer. So you say, okay, now it's going to be something like this, but not with all and just with soft. So as Max said, the most organic windows are the ones that you mix with luminance. Always mix them with luminance to don't make like a white thing in your image, to have that different parts, the different shades. So these are about cookies. Always I have like this power grade album with a lot of cookies that I usually create, and that will give me, let's think, different texture, talking about texture to the image and so on. So that's about cookies. Also, as for example, in this case, I usually also use windows. For example, I have here a similar structure as the one that Max told you. But for example, I use also windows to think about color contrast. And what you need to do, or what you need to think, is that the objects that are closer to you are more saturated and even more sharpened than the objects that are far to you. So for example, here I just create a really basic window when I decrease a little bit the saturation. And doing that, look, immediately my eye will notice or will focus more in the balloons that are on the left than the ones that are on the right. Just with that simple trick, like the one we talk, color contrast. Also, I have here, for example, another window that is this one here. And when I look at this window is going to give light to these parts. Then I can make a Luma Keyer to don't affect the shadows. Here will not affect any of the shadows, just that part. Wait, sorry, just that part. And then what I can do is I can increase the light, and this window is giving me like the way that there is more light in front than outside. I can even move this window a little bit here, and you will notice exactly the same. It's not affecting the end, and it's not affecting the shadows, and it's also taking this. For example, if I want to make the same by adding a little bit more like saturation here, I can do a circle, very soft, and I can increase a little bit of the saturation, not so much. And what you will notice is that with just 3 windows, we move from this shot that is a little bit flat to this shot that now we see different steps of depth. And this is always what we need to do. We usually can have, for example, we can have structures when we can talk about color contrast. We can have some structures when we can talk about light patterns that can be these ones that I show you here. And you can organize it as the way you need it. So let me share you another good thing. For example, here in this shot is really nice. And what you will find in this shot, let me close the gallery, is that because of the perspective we said before, we see a lot of depth. But can we increase this perspective? Yeah, definitely. You can first, for example, create one power window here, and this power window can be in this part. A lot of softness. And with that power window, what we can do is we can, the same way as we see, everything that is far is with less saturation. And everything that is far away is with less light. So we can make this, and with just that simple adjustment, we pass from this shot to this one over here. Okay, it's a little bit really saturated, but it's working. It's giving a lot of depth. I will put a little bit more saturation. And also you can do the same here. You can create here one. For example, I want this part that is more saturated and more colorful than the other one. So what I can do is I can make this window over here. And here, what I can do is, for example, I will actually, in this part, I always think, okay, does the blackest part of the image have color? No, the blacks are blacks. So if I will increase the saturation, I don't want to affect the blacks. So here I can do to filter this is to make a Luma Keyer, something like this, soft. And here I can increase a little bit the light, the highlight. You see the highlights. And also I can increase a little bit the saturation. So based on that two windows that we create, look how your view is moving from looking at that one, that I don't know, that store that is over there at the end next to the stop, from here. So definitely, and we always need to think that we need to show the viewer where we want them to see it, and this is one of the best, like of the most difficult things of HDR. When grading in HDR, we have a lot of light. So the main problem is that the person is looking at everything. So we have to do a lot of windows for them to look at the exactly part as we need it. This is our goal, to focus them in a specific action on a specific actor. So as you see, this is a normal workflow, but it's so important. But we do it after balancing, probably after the looks, and we can start creating this. In a normal workflow that you have to create, like, I don't know, that you have 700 shots per day, what I usually do is that I have these windows in a power grade. Here, lights. So, for example, if I go, let's see, I don't know, let's come here. Here, for example, let me just make a simple balance to this shot. And what I want to do is I want to increase this light that is coming from here, this light over here. So I have this one, this preset that is right. I will add it. And here, what you notice is that now I have a light coming from this part. Because it's a preset, I did it with so much light, but I can filter it. And now I have a light coming from here. And yes, it's doing a lot. It's giving a lot to my part, to my image. And also, I can also filter it so that it's not increasing the light of the darkest part. You can also save this preset with the Luma Keyers inside, so you don't lose time doing these ones. For example, I have one here that is Let me go to another shot. Here, for example, this one is improving a lot, or I can even move it here so much because I want to see more light coming from here. And remember, always soft, always soft. So look at here. Definitely is better than that it was without the window. The windows are absolutely great. So let me go back, for example, here to the shot that I have the girls. And I have one window. I will just move it from here. And this window, what you will notice is that have the Luma Keyer and also a circle. So I can position it. And then it was too much, refine it a little bit, or refine the Luma Keyer just to, in some way, to light more the actors. It's just a simple technique that we have to add this in a shot. Okay, so yeah, based on that, all I want to say is that I have a lot of power windows with cookies, lights, Luma Keyer presets, and if you want to, I always think if you want to make like to add more to an image, instead of start creating mask or start creating qualifiers with increasing the red or the blue, all of the things, no, play with lights, play with perspective, and play with the different type of contrast we talked before. Because one of the best things is also a pleasure to the eye to see a 2D image that look like a 3D image. That's our main goal. Finally, we were talking about tracking. So probably you are thinking, okay, do I have to track a power window in grading? The answer, as all of the answers in grading, is yes or no. I
It
usually
depends.
think it depends. It depends. Yes. I usually think that, for example, if a shot, I mean, I think that in the natural lights, if I move, I don't know, from here to that part, is do I have the light that moving around me like a spotlight in a theater that is a person moving the light? Is that natural? So probably no. So based on that, what I think is that okay, if this is a static shot, probably I will just make like a, I don't know, maybe if it's just for the face, yes, I can track it. But if not, I can leave it like normal and the people will not notice. For example, let's make one window here. I will have this. This is a preset for the left. Look at here. This one here. I will actually increase it here. Look, a little bit like this. Also, I can make a Luma here. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so do I need to track this window? The first thing that I will say is look at the shot. Look at the shot in real time. Probably you see, okay, yes, in this part is like taking a lot. So I will track it. Tracking Resolve is really easy and it was so funny because like a month ago, I was supporting one of the Black Magic lessons in Fusion. And there was the teacher is a VFX specialist, and he was saying that the colorists all the time do this kind of mask that are not Roto, but they do this kind of masks, and also they don't track. In VFX, you need your tracks needs to be perfect. If you're going to change the title of this wall, the tracks need to be perfect. In grading, you don't need it. Definitely, you don't need it. So for example, this shot, I will track it just to have the light more in this part. And what you need to do before tracking is instead of clicking here and see what happened, is analyze your shot. Does my shot has 3D movement? Does my shot have rotation, zoom, pan, or tilt? If it has everything as this one, that is like a person walking inside a street, yes, it will have everything. But if it's not, you can uncheck the parameters that you don't need to use, and usually the tracking is going to be better because this 3D in some of the shots will not help. So I can come here, I can start tracking, and now it's analyzing. And what you are notice is that he is creating so many points, and these points are the tracking points that is adding to the shot. It's taking some time, but don't worry. It's in some way to track in Resolve is really easy. But believe me, you don't need always to track. You don't need always to track. So the last thing that I want you to show you is, let me show you that if I have a shot here with move. Okay, for example, here one. How to track, let's see one of the artificial lights that we have in Resolve that can be a glow or a lens flare, how to track them. So if you open here the Open Effects, and if you select here glow, what you will see, command React. Okay, there you go. Here is a little bit more. Yeah. You want to track this to this part, or it even can be a lens flare. Probably will be more notable. The glow can be without any tracking in this part. Let me actually create a lens flare. Yeah, this one. So what I want is a really basic lens flare, and I want to be tracked here. So on OpenFX, you cannot track it using a window because it's going to appear this message over here that you need to create a window for tracking. So to solve this, you are going to move from window to FX, and then to FX at the left part, you have this cross, and you need to add it in a point that will have a high contrast point. And based on that, you track. Here you don't need 3D, definitely. So you track it. My computer is slow. Yeah, zoom also. There you go. Okay. So as you see, the tracking point is staying in this part, and also my flare or this artificial light that I'm using is also tracked here. Now the last question, and it's just a question for you to think, is, do we as a colorist use this kind of lights, lens flares, artificial lights, as some other tools? Yes, definitely. And Maxon has great packages with great like lens flares, glows that we can use it. And for example, for a video clip and also for some other type of, let's see, format, we can take advantage of it. So that's about me. I don't know if we have questions, Max, or if we want to add another part.
It's all good. There's no questions, and I want to add on that. On top of that, I think I heard Kevin Shaw one time mentions that as a colorist, we are now has been evolving into a finisher as well, right, Diego?
Yeah.
So the majority that we are doing is like, apart from doing the color, is also finishing. Oh yeah, there is a good questions from Martin. He wants to know, Diego, how did you get started as a colorist? But before you answer that, I think that's actually the stuff that we are going to cover in the sessions 5 in the in this series. In sessions 5, we will invite all of the guest speakers, and we'll do a, how do you call it, conversations, and we'll ask how they start in the industry, and what are the rules in the industry, and how do they get there. So if you're interested into this, we'll make sure that you show up in sessions 5.
Yeah. Definitely in lesson 5, we are going to talk more about it. But just for a short answer to Martin, is that in my recent years, what I learned more as a colorist is looking at the nature, looking at the nature and doing all of that tips that we show you about power windows. I'm taking advantage of all of that ones. Power window is, as the tool say, is really a powerful tool, really a powerful. Use it a lot, but use that ones that we show you that are generals, and always create depth. In my last years, I most of my grading has a lot of like that preset of power windows. So when I have time, because in most of the cases you don't have, when I have time, I start adding, and and that's power window adds a lot to my image. I really love them.
They name it power for reasons, right?
Yes, yes. And we have to say that I think at the beginning when Resolve, okay, when Da Vinci was the owner of Resolve and so on, it's like you have to buy like power window, each one. It doesn't have all of these ones. You have to buy one circle, one square, and so on. And they didn't have the soft also.
Wow.
So even for them was more difficult. Right now we have many, many, many. So let's use them a lot.
Exactly. The barrier to entry as a colorist nowadays is very low. And yeah, the tools is really powerful. And we live in a great day and age nowadays.
Yes, yes, definitely, definitely.
And yeah, to wrap it up, probably we should wrap it up because we're already
Yeah, there is just
in the
one
2 hour session.
last question about the
Yeah.
Stefania. Where could you get those cookies Diego has? It's so simple. Just write in Google cookies, patterns, lights, and they will appear many. They will appear many, many ones, and you just spend some time like creating some of them. Here, the ones that I create them, and then you test them. Then you test them. Also, I forgot to show you this part. I also have one. Let me show you here. One preset of a vignette. We use vignettes a lot, and one of the reasons that we use vignettes, we had to close, but this is so important. I forgot to say.
No worry, no worry.
one of the one of the best like of the things that we use vignettes is that when I apply it, first it's going to give me a lot of depth to the image. Then it's going to focus the eye of the person here at the center where I put it. Even I can move it and I can light this part. And also I remember that one time I have a student that is a physician, and he told me that the eye see more light in the edges and not in the center. So what the vignette is doing here in a 2D image that is a frame to the image, it's like it's spotting the viewer eye into the center, or we can even move it here in the way we want it. I have also them as a preset here, and you can do this vignette. My vignettes are full of soft. They are really, really full of soft. I love them. And also you can create some vignettes that, for example, this one over here, that is, wait me, that is a vignette with more freehand way or freehand style. It's up to you. It's up to you and the feeling you want to create them.
And again, this can be done by just going outside and observe the nature works, right? It's it's really free resources out there.
Yes, enjoy
Um,
the nature. Enjoy the
yeah.
nature. Perfect.
Well, yeah. Let me make myself presenter. And yeah. So I really thank you so much, guys, for showing up this week. And I hope that you somehow learn a lot from the sessions. And next week, however, on Thursday, we will have Diego back as a guest. And we will get a little bit more serious in this week. In week 4, we will start to talk about the different workflow and different pipelines in the color grading. And one of the big things that you cannot neglect nowadays in 2021, and when you are doing color grading, is that color management. It's huge, right? And yeah, we'll invite two guests, and in this case, Diego will rejoin us, and another colorist. His name is Jonathan McFeethers, and he's a colorist based in Los Angeles and been working for Russia's LA for years. And he will join us to share his workflow with us. And also, Diego will also share some of his thought of his workflow that he's using with us. We will be delighted to have both guests in the fourth sessions. That is in the August 26th, exactly, August 26th. And also on that same day, before we start our webinar, 1 hour earlier, we'll do Ask the Trainer sessions. And if you go to news, events, and August 26th, there will be Ask the Trainer. Me, myself, and Diego and Johnny will be there. So if you have questions about color grading, feel free to join us in that sessions. That sessions, particularly sessions where you can ask us everything about color grading. If you have burning questions about that, make sure to join Ask the Trainer August 26th, 1 hour before the hands-on with Maxon sessions. All right. So in the handout, you can download the download links, PDF, and also the presentations that we have today. And also, Diego kindly provided a cheat sheet to achieve lighting patterns for a human subject as well. You can find that in the handout sections. And if you want to watch the previous sessions or you want to watch another webinar, you can visit our YouTube channel under Maxon Training Team, and we will upload this recording there as well. And don't forget, you can also get a free t-shirt using the code in the download links handout, and you can get this t-shirt without paying the full price. You just need to pay for the shipping cost. And yeah, that's it for today. And I wish you a really nice day, and I really hope to see you next week, same time again. And Diego, enjoy the rest of your vacations. That's really nice place.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah, it's a nice place. Thank you,
great view.
everyone. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend and see
Thank you
you
so
next
much.
week.
See you next week.
Ciao.
Bye.